Right, in this video I am going to be doing something very different to what I normally do, which is I am going to be testing out some of my old lenses. Some of them are vintage, and I'll be testing them on the Canon M50. That's the mirrorless camera. So recently I've been using these adapters. They are called the speed boosters, and I've been using that one there, which is the Canon speed adapter for old ED lenses, and I've been having a lot of fun with some of my lenses. But I've actually got more Nikon lenses, my old Nikkors, and I've got a new adapter, and that's for the Nikkor F mounts. They call it the Nikkor G, although I would say it's just for vintage lenses. The Nikon G's to Canon EF-M. Right, so they're both from Pixco. I've been testing this one out quite a lot, and I really quite like it. It's been really good. They do say on their website you get a blue dot sometimes in high strong sunlight. I haven't really noticed that, so I'm really excited to test out the Nikon version of it. Likewise, I'm even more excited to find out what some of these old lenses I've got really actually look like, because if you know about cameras, especially on the single lens reflex, the old vintage ones, some of the mirrors on those old cameras actually filter away half of the light for the actual prism, so you never really see the actual image until it's exposed on film, and then you go, oh, actually I thought it was a lot darker than that, because that's what you'll get through the viewfinder. In fact, it's sometimes very different from what you see from the viewfinder. So I'm very, very excited, because on the Canon M50 the light comes straight in to the sensor, and there's no reflecting half of it away or anything like that. So I'll show you what these adapters look like. They work really well. If you hear crunching sounds, me on some paper, so forgive me if I'm not super duper like a professional photographer, but I'm just doing this out of interest, and I'm sure quite a few of you will be interested like I am as well. So this is FD-EOS M from Pixco, bought from China on eBay, about £57. Comes in a nice, never really used that, nice little wallet thing. Looks like that originally, so I've had to actually go and find them again, because they've been I've been using this extensively. It's got a nice metal feel to it. It really looks nice. It's obviously black in appearance, I guess. Let's have a look. That's one side of it. I don't want to open both sides at the same time. On the Canon, it's just it's a rotating kind of bevel there. On this side looks like that. There's no electrical connectors that you might expect, so it's not really for like autofocus or anything like that. Won't work. For the Nikon, looks like that. So silvery kind of appearance on the bevel, all metal, feels all metal, quite weighty. That's me crunchy back. And I'm going to get some light on this side. So we look, looks like that. So there's none of them electrical contacts, even though it says it's for a G lens. It's not really. It's really for vintage lenses. These you can use a G lens on it, but don't expect any kind of autofocus or anything like that. This side looks like that. Again, about £57. I'll work out which way the lid goes. It's got a little knobbly bit there. You pull on that, pulls that back to help you to rotate the release. It goes on there like that. Right, so I'll be testing out quite a few. So some of them you may have seen videos of such, but you would normally expect someone be testing old Prime Canon or Prime Nikon lenses, but not with me. I've got some really old ones I would have bought on a budget. So some of the old Vivitars and Unitors. You think some of you'd be scratching your head thinking, what's that? That's the fun of it. Anyway, I do have some old Prime lenses. One thing, when I come to test the 50mm, I'm not sure what the multiplication factor I have to do is. So I do know for the Canon, if say for example it's 50mm was the old prime lens, I multiply by 1.6, then I multiply by 0.72, which is when you buy it tells you to do that, multiply by 0.72. So I get a certain figure. I don't know what it is for the Nikon conversion. I've heard it, I've read somewhere it's like 1.5 for Nikons, but is it for the Nikon Zs? They are, aren't they? The mirrorless ones for them. They're multiplied by 1.5. I don't know how it affects changing it from Nikon to Canon, but we'll find out. So I'm using the 50 as a kind of a standard. You'll see me, I'll talk for it. As soon as I get to the 50 Canon, I'll do the Canons first, then I'll switch over to the Nikon. Once I've got it, switch over to Nikon, if you see any kind of difference in magnification, then you would know that actually if it's more magnified, if I switch over to the Nikon, the picture becomes kind of more wide angle, then you know it's the 1.5. So ignore everything then in red, which will be for, I'll put both calculations up, I just don't know at the moment. If it's in red for the Nikons, that means it's multiplied by 1.6. If I leave it on something like white, it's multiplied by 1.5. Alright, so I'm not sure. I think it's going to be multiplied by 1.5. I don't know. I'll try and keep the distance of the camera away from the object the same, especially for the 50s. I've even got some really super zooms. I don't know how it's going to work. I might even have to move my camera way back for the super zooms, but I will let you know roughly how far. I've got a long meter rule here, you see that right there, and I'll let you know how far I'm going to move back. But it's the quality I'm really interested in, isn't it? Yes, you will be interested as well, I'm sure. They do go down f-stops, right? So these will actually give you a brighter kind of image. So one full stop with that as well. And I'll give you the equivalents of them, and I will also give you the equivalents, like I said, of taking it down, the equivalent of what it would be on the Canon EF-M. So for example 50 would be something like 54, and I'll give you them, and the f-stops as well. I've calculated all that out. Worked out it's a root 2 job, so I have to divide by root 2. Right, okay, so without further ado, let's test out. And the image I'm going to use a background that's colourful, which is a painting I'm still working on. I've been working on for years. The reason I'm using that is because it's large. If I zoom away, if I move away, hopefully the picture will still be there. It's colourful, bright colours, and I'll use a kind of faded up robot sitting right roughly in the middle here. A very old vintage robot, actually, worth a lot of money, I think. But it's got faded colours, so I've got sharp colours at the back, faded robot cut at the front, and of course I'll focus on the eyes of the robot, and it will be done manually. Focusing will be done manually. One more thing I forgot, I'll be using not at the moment, I'm using what do you call it, the auto white balance at the moment. I'll be switching over to using a grey card and using a custom white balance. I've got focus here as the word. I'll take a picture of that in a minute, and I'll use the cassette. You know, I'll keep the light roughly the same. I'll try not. Well, I won't be moving this light around once I do the still photography. Oh, I'll be doing it fully opened as well, plus a few stops down. Say for example that on the 1.8 50mm, I'll be doing it fully open 1.8. Then I'll also do something like f4. If it's only got a couple of ranges, I'll do it fully open and fully closed. First one I'll be testing is the lens that comes with the camera, the M50, which is the 15 to 45, the standard lens, a very good one. This is the one that is built for it. There is the crop factor will be already just times 1.6, so I'll give you all that when I'm doing the stills photography. Right, so the first one is done with the Canon EF-M 15 and 45. The equivalent would be multiplied by 1.6. It becomes 24 to 72 millimeters. F-stop is 3.5 to 6.3. Is a image stabilizing lens. So next picture you will see is me photographing the robot. So the first vintage lens is a Unitor. It's a Canon FD mount. It's a 28mm lens. It's a prime lens. The equivalent would give you times 1.6 times 0.72 would give you the equivalent of 32.25mm. It's made in Japan, and the f-stops goes from the largest is 2.8, goes all the way to 22, so one full stop down basically divide by √2 will give you f2. So it's an f2 once I connect the adapter on it. So I need the adapter to use on the Canon. That's what it looks like. This Auto Unitor. It's even got a serial number there, made in Japan. And the end of it, I guess some people will be curious what the other end looks like. I have to rotate that. That's what it looks like. Very nice. I use this quite often. It's really nice. Okay, the third lens I'm going to try is the vintage. It's a Tokina, Tokina. It's an FD mount, of course, for the Canon. I've got my Canon A1 there, the manual camera. It's a 80 to 200mm, which is equivalent to when I use the speed adapter, speed booster. It becomes 92mm to 230mm. It's a 4.5, the largest diameter, f4.5 to 22, f22. So it becomes, when I multiply by 1.6 and multiply by 0.72, becomes f3.18. and of course it's on there. I haven't got an old I haven't got an old backing to that, so that's why I left it on there. I've got ones on other lenses, but I've left that on there on the camera itself. I'll have a look at the front of it if you want. It's quite a interesting little lens. These are the zoom. This is where we used to zoom, so you can see 80 there. If I do that, it becomes 200, and I can't just pull back. I have to kind of rotate. It's got quite a mechanism. It's quite complicated, and all these are manual. Or is it a Nikon? I do that. It seems like I can pull just forward and backwards for zooming. Looks like this. So if you're interested in fishing out these old lenses from eBay or anything like that, well worth it. You get amazing fun with them, and I will be testing. You can actually see from this video if it's worth getting this one to attach to your camera. So that's the Tokina. That will be the third lens I'm testing. Right, so the fourth lens was still on Canon FD mount. It's the 50mm. This is the one you would normally get as a prime lens if you buy a camera, which is what it was. It was fitted to the A1 that I just showed earlier on the Canon A1. This one is a 50mm. Be equivalent to, if I multiply by 1.6 multiply by 0.72, to 57.6mm. That's how wide or zoomed it is. It's a prime lens. It's a f1.8 largest diameter, and I do use this a lot, and it's really great at night, as you can expect, because the f stop now becomes f1.272, which is great, which is really good for dark backgrounds, darkness, nighttime vision. All right. And it looks like that. FD mount, 50mm. I guess you'll be interested in also looking at the back of it. It looks this big, really quite big. It's about a 2p piece, I would say. The next one is the Nikkor AF. So this is autofocus now. This is from the 2000s, 1990s, 2000s. It's still an F mount. They call it Nikon AF Nikkor 1.4 f1.4 is a really large opening, lets in a lot of light. 50mm, made in Japan, and since it came off anyway, that is huge. That's like a 50p, bigger than a 50p piece. That's a huge aperture at the back. I find one that fits properly. It doesn't feel like it fits properly. I don't want that coming off. And the front looks like that. It's huge. You look inside. There is some electronics on this, just here, but not half as many little bits and pieces as modern ones. And the stats on this is, so it's an AF Nikkor 50mm, so it comes to the equivalent of now, because we're on the Nikons, if it's a multiplied by 1.5, it'll be a 54mm, or if it's a multiplied by 1.6, it's a 57.6, just like the Canon one. The 1.4 turns to a full stop divided by √2, becomes f1. So it's f1. So it's a very, very large. Once I put the speed booster on it, made in Japan. Right, the next lens is a vintage prime Nikkor 50mm, and it's a 1.8, your standard 1.8 to 22 f 1.8 to f22. So that gives us an equivalent divided by √2 of f 1.272. It's a 50mm. So you find loads of these around. I really love this lens. I used to love the pictures he used to give. No idea what it looks like now on a Canon, but we'll find out. The front aperture looks like that, and I've got kind of like a brown filter at the front, brownish colour filter. It's made in Japan again, of course. I think I've checked all but one of my lenses may not be made in Japan, but the glass was, though. That's what the back of it looks like. This is the Nikon F3, in case you're wondering. I can't remember if this is AI or anything like that. It's AI.S, it's probably AI.S, I think, this lens. So rusty, it made trouble putting it back together. You can find these around. Yep, I'm having trouble. Give me a second. Right, so a little bit there goes on roughly there, and it just rotates, clicks in nicely, and this is to give you the correct metering. Right, I have no idea what these cost now. You have to look it up, but I'm just really interested in the image quality, really. Next on the list is another vintage Vivitar 24mm. So if it's a multiplied by 1.5, it becomes a 25.92mm, or if you didn't see the image change between Canon and the Nikon, it will be multiplied by 1.6, which will give us 27.648. It's an AI.S lens. Its largest diameter is f2.8, so that gives us the equivalent of f2. Another one of these F mount lenses. The back of it first looks like that, quite small aperture. The front of it looks like that, so it's a really small wide angle, really nice. 52mm. I'll be really interested to see what the image looks like. So quick view around, looks like that. Plasticky feel to the focusing ring, I would say. There we go. The next one is the vintage F mount again, Vivitar again. It's the 80 to 200mm, which would give us the equivalent of 86.4 to 216mm if it was multiplied by 1.5. If it was multiplied by 1.6, it would be 92 to 230mm. Of course, on these zooms I'm just going to be testing it out at the 80 equivalent. Alright, so 4.5, f4.5 to 32, f32, so that gives us an equivalent of f3.18. It's made in Japan. I think this one has got a funny zoom on it. Yeah, it's got quite interesting. I can't really remember how all the work functions go, but it's not as plain as pulling it backwards and forward. You kind of got it can go. I think this one can go macro as well, so it could be the one that goes macro. Not 100% sure. Yeah, I think it can. Look at that focus. You can focus to 2 feet. Oh, meters. No, my mistake. I'm not an expert on these. But again, you got AI.S. One of them goes macro. I'm pretty sure one of my lenses does. Front of it, I can't remember which one. So long since I used it. Huge aperture. Back of it looks like that. Big tunnel. Be interested to see what that looks like. Next one is the Nikon ED. Alright, so we're getting up to 2000s here. AF Nikon autofocus, 70 to 300mm. So if it was multiplied by 1.5, it will be 75.6mm to 324mm, or if it's multiplied by 1.6 instead of 1.5, it will end up as 80.64 millimeter to 345 millimeter. It's an f 4.5 to 5.6. It's a D lens. It goes all the way to 32 f32. So the f factor becomes one stop down is f 3.18. Look at all the dust on it. I have not been looking after this one very well. So here we go, Nikon ED. It's a D lens, so there'll be some electronics on this one. Here it is, there's electronics right there. Of course, nothing compared to these days. That's the aperture at the back. Don't get dust in the inside, that's okay. I usually put filters on everyone, and this one's no exception. Really quite nice. The filter size for this is 62. It's a UV filter. Does that when you spin it, I guess. You autofocus it. It's got a nice lens hood that comes along with it. Made in Japan, and the lens hood is HB15. Good thing about these lens hoods, you can put it on like so it's out of the way. Right, the next lens on my list, it's a Tamron. It's on my old, from about 2000 F80, Nikon F80. So partly kind of autofocus now. Interesting lens. This is a Aspherical LD, it says. So the lenses are no longer kind of a regular shape, they kind of change in curvature. That's where the aspherical comes from. It's a 28 to 200 millimeter, so it'd be equivalent to, if it was multiplied by 1.5, of 30.24 to 216, or if it's multiplied by 1.6, 32.25 to 230 millimeter. It's an F. The largest diameter is 3.8, goes to 5.6 roughly, that's around there, and its smallest diameter is f22. So the largest diameter equivalent, one stop down, using the speed booster, it becomes f2.68. Made in Japan. It's got a really nice looking lens hood on it. It's got a really large diameter, if I remember rightly. Of course, I've got a lens filter on it. There it is. It's huge. I can't remember if I've locked it or not. It should rotate. That zooms it in and out. There we go. 200 there and 28 there. I can't remember if because it's on the camera, I think it's not letting me do this. If I put it on the Canon, I should be able to spin this around. because it's actually, this is actually made for a camera like this. It's not allowing me to do it. I'll have to switch over, I think, on this button here. Manual. Yeah, there we go. Memory's still there, but just barely hanging on. I think if I lock it, then all the autofocus kicks in. So that's that. Oh, let's have a look at the inside, the back of it on me. Looks like that. Quite a small aperture there. So if I can do this a bit quicker than I did the other one, I'm kind of leant over, so it feels kind of unnatural. Here we go. Here we go. It snaps. There's that one. Tamron. 28 to officially 28 to 200. The last one, the glass is made in Japan. The body is probably not. It's the 400mm. It's a Nikon again, Nikon F mount, and it's a beast, I guess. Multiplied by 1.5, it becomes 432mm, or multiplied by 1.6 becomes 460mm. Largest diameter aperture is 6.3, so it gives an equivalent of f4.45, one stop down, goes to f22, and it's a beast. So it's even got the bit where you kind of mount from here, because they know it's going to be a beast. I don't think I should be doing that, I should be doing that. So that's what it looks like on this side, and this side does that, and it's called an Access SQ. I didn't even know the make of it, really. It's called Access SQ, Sierra Quebec. Serial number on it, everything. I'm not even sure I'll ever get this to work. I don't think I've got far enough back I can go in my room to operate this, but we'll find out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's have a look at the pictures anyway now.